All right, welcome back to Genius. All right, so this should be the last session in this chapter. Strings. We have been talking a lot about strings already, and let's talk about performance optimization. How best can you use string? All right, how best can you use string and for it to be performance so that you don't write code like someone who is not a professional. How do you use string like a professional? How do you optimize performance for your strings? So, performance optimization, optimizing string performance in JavaScript involves understanding the underlying mechanics of strings and employing efficient practices. So when we talk about you optimizing your string, right, it involves that you have to understand the underlying mechanics of strings, and that is what we have already taught in this chapter extensively. We have got to understand the mechanics of strings. How does string work? The concatenation, how do um, when you are string immutability, you have to understand that. And again, you need to, after understanding the underlying mechanics of string, you need to employ efficient practices. What is the best way to concatenate your string? What is the best way to create your string? What is the best way to work with your string concatenation in a loop and stuff like that? So you need to understand the most efficient practices when you're working with strings. By following these principles, you can achieve better performance in string manipulations. All right. So basically, you would always manipulate strings in your application. You will always. So when you understand these principles, you can achieve better performance in string manipulation while maintaining readability and maintainability in your JavaScript code. Now, basically, you writing a program that is very performant and maintainable and readable, you are showing that you're a pro. Okay. So first one, let us see how you can use string concatenation efficiently. So use the plus or template literal. Now let's take a look at the use of plus, the concatenation operator, or the template literal. Now for small scale concatenation, using the plus operator, or the concatenation operator or template literal is efficient. All right, when you're working with small scale concatenation. And for me, I just advise that you always use template literals. Always use template literals for your concatenation. Just basically use template literals in creating your strings. It will save you a lot of headaches. A lot, okay? Now, avoid using array.join for simple cases. Now, when we were talking about strings in the loops, performance, when we were talking about strings immutability, we talked about you using array.join, especially when you're doing concatenation in a loop that is a long loop. Now, but you should not use array.join for simple cases. For simple cases, use the plus operator or the template literals. While array.join is performant in some contexts, it's unnecessary for basic concatenation. You don't just want to concatenate small string and you're using array.join. No, array.join should be using when performance is really, really, really important, especially when you're working with loops. Okay, so example is this: hello plus word. It is very fast and straightforward. All right, but you can still use template literal, and this is the modern and it is readable. Okay, you can use the modern the template literal for your concatenation too. Here we are just concatenating this hello word, all right, with an exclamation mark. Okay, so basically, if possible, sure, not if possible, make it as a habit. Always use template literals for your strings. Okay, now minimize repeated string operations. Minimize repeated strings operations. Okay, excuse me. All right, so repeated concatenations can lead to performance issues due to creation of intermediate strings. Remember, when you're working with repeated string operation, remember that your concatenation, especially in loops, they can cause performance issues because your strings are always being created anytime you create a string. So when you're doing that, understand that strings are immutable. So what is the solution? Use a buffer-like approach with arrays and join at the end. So when you're working with loops and you're doing repeated string operation, you should use the array.join. If you can look at this code now, we started with creating an array. I'm so sorry that I've been mentioning an array, but we have not thought of array, but it's fine. This is an array. The first one, left part equal to this empty square bracket is an array. So while they are now looping through this whole thing, they are now pushing. There's something we call to push. Push means to add an item into an array. So for every iteration, they are pushing, they are adding this line number, because this I is going to be the number actually. So they are saying line, means line 0, line 1, line 2, until it's up to 999. All right. So they are pushing it. They are pushing it inside. So for every iteration, they are pushing, they are adding this item, this string into this array. And at the end of the day, they are now doing array.join, and they are joining it with a new line character. This will actually make the whole lines to be on their own, the whole items to be on their own. So this is a better way of doing it, right? When you're working with repeated strings operation in array, in loops. So you use the array.join, but the advice is don't use array.join for simple cases. Use array.join when you have look at this loop. This loop is a very long one. 1000 is a very long one. All right. So prefer immutable practices. Prefer immutable practices. Strings in JavaScript are immutable. All right. So in programming, it is always better to prefer immutable practices. It to save you. In short, the language itself was created, most of the things in the language was created to be immutable, and they have their reasons. And we talked about that when we were talking about string immutability. All right. There is a lot of reasons. One is that your code cannot just change without your knowledge. All right. And whenever somebody changes the code, or even you changes the value of your variable or something, they are creating a new one. All right. So it will reduce the errors that might result. Modifying them repeatedly creates new string, which can be expensive. All right. So when you're working with string, understand that modifying them repeatedly creates new string, which can be very expensive, because in your memory, these strings are being created in your memory. And when you're creating too much of them, that means it's taking space in your memory, all right, which is not going to be a good one. That's why I said it's expensive, because you're using your memory, okay? Reduce operations like slicing and replacing in large data set. So when you're working with a large, let's say you get some data from the database and it's a very large one, all right? When you're working with, don't use slicing and replacing in large data sets. So these are some principles you have to follow. Okay, so use native strings method. Split, slice, replace to lowercase, etc. are optimized for performance in modern JavaScript. But remember what this previous said. Don't use them in large data sets. Okay, all right, but they are very optimized for in modern JavaScript engines. All right, so like stream.stream is a native streaming. It's a native excuse me, it's a native string method. All right, so they are optimized in modern JavaScript engines. JavaScript engines have optimized, they optimize all these methods. Okay, so optimize regular expressions. Regular expression is the next thing we are going to be talking the next chapter after this session. So precompile frequently use regular expression patterns. Precompile them. When you have a regular expression pattern that you'll be using every time, precompile it. So when we do regular expression, we are going to see what we mean by precompiling. So precompile them when you're frequently using a particular pattern, just precompile it so that these patterns are not being created. If you know that you're going to be using a particular regular expression pattern, precompile it so that it's not every time you want to use it, it will be created. No. Use non-capturing groups and limit backtracking. Yeah, these are the things we'll be talking about in the next chapter. All right. Use non-capturing groups and limit backtracking. So this is a regular expression and this is a pattern. This let reg is equal to this pattern. So Now, this is a non-capturing for faster match. All right, so don't worry, we are going to see what we mean by being non-capturing, all right, in the next chapter. So avoid stringifying objects repeatedly. I don't know if any of you have used the JSON.stringify. Okay, now what we mean by stringifying a string, an object is we can actually convert an object into a JSON string. I am sorry if you don't know what JSON is. This JSON, we'll be talking about JSON in the advanced JavaScript. That's what we'll talk about JSON. We'll be talking about it in the advanced JavaScript, okay? So, but we are not talking about it in this course. This course is JavaScript for beginners. So if you're converting objects to strings, all right, JSON.stringify or using toString method, ensure that you catch them or you reduce conversions when possible. I use this one a lot because, of course, when you're working with the database, you're fetching data from the database and they basically come in form of JSON. If I thought it was created in JSON, they actually come in form of object. So if you want to convert it to a JSON object, you will have to use the JSON.stringify to convert it to a JSON string. Then you can now pass it. Okay, so when you work with all these things, you have to make sure that you catch them. Catching means saving something. Let's say now you're making a request to a server. Excuse me. Now, the server, most of the server, the browser will catch. If you get a data request from a response from the server, the browser will catch it so that you don't have to be going whenever you need that data, you don't have to be going to the server every time asking for it. So catching is something that, okay, instead of us going to the server every time, let us just have it somewhere. We will ask for it for the first time. Once we get it, we can now save it somewhere. We catch it, we store it somewhere. Then whenever we need that data, instead of going to the server, we'll just go to the catch and take it. Okay, so that's what we mean by catching. So when you're working with objects, converting objects to string, ensure that you catch them or you reduce the conversions when possible, because all these JSON.stringify object to string, they are heavy. All right, so when converting them, reduce conversions when possible, catch them. Okay, now consider web workers for heavy string manipulation. We'll be talking about web workers in the JavaScript, advanced JavaScript. All right, but here we are not we were not going to be talking about web workers in this course. So basically, web workers are something we use whenever we have an intensive operation, whenever we have tasks that are taking too long, an operation that will take too long. So basically, we offload them using web workers in order to prevent our UI blocking. Sorry about that. So whenever you have intensive operations, offload work to a web worker to prevent UI blocking. All right. So because if you have a JavaScript program that is taking too long to complete, it will block your UI and it will make your UI not responsive until the program you're running finishes, the task finishes or completes. But whenever you have such thing, always offload them to the web worker so that the web worker can simultaneously, asynchronously do it. All right. So don't worry if you don't understand it. But the thing is this: whenever you start doing heavy string manipulation, remember that you should use web workers. You should not be using doing your normal string manipulation without using a web worker. Okay. Leveraged typed arrays if applicable. Don't worry, we'll still talk about these typed arrays, all right? But if manipulating binary string data, encoding, whenever you're encoding string data, use typed arrays or similar types for better performance. Use this uint8 array. Look at what we mean by encoding. Now you might want to encode. You know, remember we have talked about encoding, all right, and character set. So encoding means, let's say as we have this H as a character, if you want to encode H, you're actually converting it to its numeric value, to its ASCII code. Let me use the better word. You're converting it to its ASCII code. So now when we are encoding this hello world, we are converting this whole hello world to their ASCII code. And if you run this code now and I put this encoded, they are going to be in numbers. All right. You remember now, ASCII code are actually in numbers. So when you encode this, you actually get numbers. All right. So whenever you find yourself, but of course, you cannot be doing this as a beginner. This is actually advanced. So in case, this is just for you to know. All right. So whenever you want to encode, you use this typed arrays and stuff like this. So you can also profile and benchmark. When you're working with your string, maybe you're doing a string manipulation, all right, operation. So you have to profile it and check how long it's taking. Use tools like Chrome DevTools to profile your string operations. Libraries like benchmark.js can measure performance in different scenarios. But basically, the easiest way to check how long your operation is taking or a task is taking is by using this. Here we are saying console.time concat, all right? And we are saying we are going to perform this task. We are going to this loop. We want to check how long it will take. So when you do console.time and give it a label and write your code, it's going to run, and at the end of the day, it's going to print out to you how long it took for this code to run. Sorry about that. Okay, so this will not tell you how long this code has run. So if it is taking too long to run, you know. So you have to profile and benchmark your code when you're working with string manipulation. You can see here we are doing string concatenation, and we are trying to console the time it took for this program to run, for this task to complete. And with that, you will now know whether it is going to be time consuming and whether it's going to be performance. So you actually know what it is. You can also use string utilities libraries for advanced needs. Libraries like Lodash, don't worry, this is actually higher than you right now, but there's a library called Lodash that offer optimized utilities for common string operations. All right, so they offer some common functions that these utilities, they optimize the common string operations that we do. So thank you very much. This is just a very short one. And in case you don't understand anything, please remember, raise a topic in the community, whether WhatsApp or maybe the community in the platform, so that we can discuss about it. Thank you very much. Write your test, all right? Do your assignment if there's any, and I'll see you in the next session. In the next session, we'll be talking about regular expression. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next session.